Hello everyone, welcome to my channel again, and today I come with another topic, and this is called the biodiversity. Okay, so first we understand what is biodiversity. Okay, so what is biodiversity? Biodiversity, that means the variability of the individuals. Okay, biodiversity means the population, all the population that living in an environment, including the species and communities in a particular area. Okay, it means the variability and the variety of the living organisms. So what is biodiversity? Biodiversity means in an ecosystem there are different kinds of species remain. That is not only animal, plants also, insects also. So all these not all these living organisms, they are under the biodiversity. Okay, this is the variability or the varieties of the different species. Next we read or learn what is the biointegrity. The biointegrity means any community, there are actually the primary producers, primary, secondary and tertiary consumers and the decomposers. Okay, and they are all interrelated. That means dependence on each other. Okay, so all the living components are tied up. Three functional aspects are there by which they are actually dependent or tied up together. Okay, so this the functional aspects are generation of the biomass, nutrient flow and the energy flow. Generation of biomass means the when the primary producers, number of primary producers become increased, that means the number of all the other species that are directly or indirectly dependent on the primary producers, the mass number of that also will be increased. Okay. Second one, this is called the biomass. Clear? Second one, the nutrient flow. Nutrient flow means actually the nutrient, how the nutrients passes from the primary producers to the secondary, tertiary and the primary consumers and at last to the decomposers. That means the nutrients, how the nutrients flow. You just check out my another video that is related to the ecosystem and you can understand it properly. But today I will describe you very briefly. That is then what is the nutrient flow? Nutrient flow means actually the primary not producers, they take the energy from the sunlight, okay, and they make their food by the process of photosynthesis, and this food is eaten up by the herbivores. Okay, then herbivores are eaten up by the tertiary and the secondary consumers. Okay, so in that way the nutrients from the plants that comes to the herbivores and the carnivores, and after death all the nutrients that remains already or present within the producers and the consumers, they are totally decomposed by the decomposers, and the decomposers means the fungus, bacteria, etc., and they totally gain their nutrients from the rotten body of the plants or the animals. Clear? This is the nutrient flow. Now this is the energy flow. What is energy flow? Energy flow is just like nutrient flow. Here the nutrients flows from one trophic level to another, but in case of energy flow, that is same way, but it is also related to the non-living things. That means the energy that comes from the sunlight that remain within the plant's body, and that energy actually directly or indirectly passes to the all the trophic levels. Okay, so this is the energy flow. Now then what is biointegrity and biodiversity? I think you can understand it. Okay, so now we read primary producers. There are two types we can see. If the primary producers, they are only one type, okay, so community cannot recover, goes to extinction. Okay, one second. if the producers, suppose you just imagine the producers is only one type, okay? The producer, if the producers only one type, what happen if the some climatic changes occur? Suppose you think about earthquake or flood or any disaster that happen there. So what happened? The one community, if the one community that is totally destroyed by the natural calamities, so what happened? The dependent consumers that only on the primary producers that are primary consumers and the secondary consumers and the tertiary consumers that are dependent on the primary producers, they also will be the process of destruction, okay? The extinction occur. So you just understand, if that producers, number of producers or the variety of the producers is maximum, that means there are not only one kind of producers, different kind of producers. So what happened if any natural calamity occur, so then one producer that become destroyed but other producers they remain there, okay? So the herbivores that are totally dependent on the primary producers or the producers, they can survive. Clear? They can survive, and as the herbivores they survive, that means all the carnivores that are dependent on the herbivores, they also survive. So that means if the variety means the biodiversity, the variety of the community is there in any ecosystem or any defined area, so there the survivability rate become increased, okay? So if the variability is very less, so there in that situation the survivability rate becomes decreased. Clear? This is the relation between the biodiversity and the biointegrity. Now we learn what kinds of biodiversity we can see, okay? Okay. Now we read about the genetic diversity, species diversity and alpha diversity and ecosystem diversity. What is the genetic diversity? Genetic diversity means the variations of the genes in the species. Within species, there are the variability of the genes, different kind of genetic variations we can see in a species. Okay, this is the first one. Second one is the species diversity. What is the species diversity? Variation of the species within region. In a region, there are different kinds of species. So, this is the variation of the species and is known as the species diversity. Okay. The third one is the ecosystem diversity. What is that ecosystem diversity? All species plus abiotic factors of a region. All species and also the abiotic factors of a region. So there are the three types of the biodiversity. First of all, we can see one is the genetic, second one is the species, and the third one is the ecosystem. The genetic means the genetic variation, species diversity means the variation of the species, and the third one is the ecosystem diversity that included not only species, also the abiotic factors of a region. Next one is the alpha diversity. What is the alpha diversity? Alpha diversity that extends a particular habitat in a... Stop it. Okay, this is alpha diversity. Alpha diversity means this is alpha diversity. Alpha diversity, that means in a particular habitat, that occurs in a particular habitat. Okay. Second one, number of species per unit area. And third one, empty area colonized by an animal group that distributed all over the area. Clear? So this is the alpha diversity. Alpha diversity, that means what happened here? It occurs in a particular habitat. In a single habitat you can say, that means not all over, in a particular habitat. Okay. And second one, number of species per unit area. We count the species per unit area. Okay, this is the second one. And the third one, with empty space, that is totally some empty space and some species they came there and occupies the region. Okay, so first of all they came in an empty area and occupies these particular region, and after that they totally distributed, because in that situation the resource amount is high, so and the species very few, so that means they totally distributed all over the area. Okay, so this is the alpha diversity. Now we learned what is beta diversity, what is gamma diversity, what is delta diversity, and how they are interrelated with each other. Okay. Okay, now we learn about the beta diversity, gamma diversity and delta diversity. So what is the beta diversity? This diversity we can see between the two habitats, two or more than two habitats. Okay, and this occurs generally in the large area and various groups of, when the various group of animal group or any species that totally colonize a large area. That means the area is high and the resource amount is very high, so they cannot remain a particular area. Different kinds of species, they try to avoid the competition with the other species. They totally colonize the whole large area. This is called the beta diversity. Clear? Now this is the gamma diversity. This is regional diversity. That means we just consider in the diversity that occurs within a high region, within a particular region. Clear? And here it includes generally geographical replacement. Geographical replacement means the geographical replacement occurs in some cases, so that's why the species diversity that changes, and this includes within the gamma diversity. Clear? Next one is the delta diversity, and what is the delta diversity? Here the between two large regional areas. That means this we consider the diversity or the variability of the species within the two regions. Just you can understand is what is alpha. Alpha means when the diversity remain in very small area or the per unit area. Clear? The beta diversity, that means two habitat. Alpha diversity we can say also within a particular habitat, but in case of beta diversity we say that diversity occurs between the two habitats or more than habitats. Clear? The gamma that includes the large area, that means region, within region. Clear? And the delta, that means between the two regions. Okay, the diversity that occurs generally between the two regions. So these are all the kinds of diversity. We just learned about the different kinds of diversity. Another diversity also is there, that is the point diversity. It is also very less, and this diversity we can say, one second. The point diversity, that means also it is a part of alpha diversity. It is the part of alpha diversity, and we just consider them within very small areas. Sometimes also it is found in generally in the small habitat like the alpha diversity, but also here we it compare with the genetic diversity, because point diversity means we just consider about the varieties of the genes also within the habitat. Okay, variety of the genes also within the habitat, this is also considered about the point diversity. Okay, clear? So these are the different kinds of biodiversity we learned, and now we learn what is the uses of biodiversity and how the biodiversity become decreases. Okay, so these are first we wrap it, and then we learn the uses and the destruction of the biodiversity. Clear? Okay, now we learn the threats to biodiversity. So what are the reasons that's why the biodiversity loss is occurred in such a situation? First one is the over-exploitation. The second one is the habitat loss and the fragmentation. Third one is invasive species, that means the introduction of exotic species. Fourth one, climate change and the pollution. Okay, first we discuss about the over-exploitation. What is over-exploitation? And this over-exploitation process totally is the activity of the human. Okay, then that means the human are responsible for the biodiversity loss. Okay, or the destruction of the biodiversity. The capturing of the animals, harvesting of the animals, though these are totally done by the humans. Okay, so humans generally capture and they hunting or the fishing or catching of animals for the transportation. That means actually they capture the animals and then they sell them for the different purposes, and they earn money. Okay, so this is the over exploitation, and here the human is actually, all these are the process. The nature is not responsible maximum, but human is responsible maximum. Clear? The second one is the habitat loss and the fragmentation. Habitat loss and fragmentation means you just imagine some species they remain in a particular habitat, and if in such a certain situation the habitat loss the habitat loss is possible in every condition. That means the cutting down of the trees or the filling of wetland. Clear? For obviously the purpose of human. So this is the habitat loss and the fragmentation. So what happens in that situation? Either the total habitat that loss or the fragmentation of the habitat. That means the habitat is totally divided into the small pieces. Okay. So the species that remain in such a habitat, they suffer the problems. Okay. They suffer. Generally suffer, and actually they cannot survive. Generally they cannot survive and they totally loss or they totally destroyed. Clear? Third one is the invasive species. This is also about the invasive species. It occurs naturally or the artificially also. Some habitat that is occupied by certain species and the resource is limited there. Suppose. So here, if other species that comes to remain there and for sharing the resources with that species, so what happens in that situation? The native species, they already remain there, they totally suffered and they cannot sustain there, and they try to fight with the coming species, but at last they lost because they have very little adaptive features, or they cannot fight with that species. So the different problems arise, so actually they cannot survive, they totally lost. This way the biodiversity destruction is possible. And the fourth one is the climate change and the pollution. The climate change, it is naturally occur, but naturally climate changing that occurs after a long time. That means in that situation the all the species, they can get time for increasing the adaptive features within their body for accustoming with the environment. Okay, but when human attach there, or human is responsible for the changing of the climate, in that situation all the species, plant or animal, everything, they cannot get much time for getting the adaptive features, or they cannot accustom with the changing environment, and in that situation the destruction is possible. Okay, so these are the threats of biodiversity. Now we learn just last one, the uses of biodiversity and the relation between the alpha, beta and the gamma diversity. Okay. Now we learn why the biodiversity is necessary for the environment. First one, ecosystem services. That means the maintenance of the ecosystem. This is the main point. Actually, without biodiversity, the total balance of the ecosystem that become lost. Okay. So due to presence of different kinds of species, including plants and animals also, so also the insects. That means the very low are the decomposers, they totally include within the biodiversity. So actually they are involved for the balancing of the ecosystem. Okay. second one is the prevention and the migration of the natural disaster. This is actually the mainly helpful is the plant producer. Okay, plant producer. Why? Because forest and grasslands generally help in the controlling. They totally help to control the soil erosion. Okay, they totally control the soil erosion because during the that during the raining with the rainwater, the topsoil that totally washed out and they totally goes to the river. So this is totally controlled by the producers. Generally grassland in forest and the grassland, they control this soil erosion process. Third one is the provision of the food security and the drugs and the medicines. Different kinds of drugs and medicines now today's or nowadays that are produced by using the different biodiversity. That means different plant products or different very little insects from insects or the fungus, the pesticides. This is biodegradable pesticides are produced in the factories. Okay. And another is important, while biodiversity provides the food stuff. You know that honeybees, actually we get honey from honeybees or wax from honeybees. The other important thing that totally we are dependent on the wildlife. Okay. And the last one is the aesthetic and the cultural benefits. That means the ecotourism. We all people generally like the natural environment. Okay, so if the biodiversity is remain in our nearby areas, so we generally like to go there for it's not that we just for getting relaxed. Okay, for getting the relax or we feel relaxed. So when we move in the natural environment, so ecotourism is the main factor here. The ecotourism naturally sanctuary and the reserve forest, they are totally used as ecotourism. Different people, they go in different season for remaining with the connection of nature. They try to remain with the nature. Okay, so ecotourism is a main factor. That is the aesthetic benefit. Okay, aesthetic benefit. So these are all the uses of biodiversity, why the biodiversity is very important to us. Okay, now we just learn one point, what is the relation between the alpha, beta and gamma, and we just learn it in my next video because the video becomes very large. Okay, so that's why stop here. I just stop here up to this part. Okay, in my this video, and other part of the biodiversity I discuss with you in my next video. Okay, thank you.